The war ended 5 months later. Germany lay in ruins, cities flattened, the Reich dissolved, and millions displaced. Lieutenant James Walker survived the remainder of the fighting, carrying with him the haunting memory of a man who had no reason to help, yet did. Back home in Ohio, Walker tried to move on. He returned to his small town, married his sweetheart, and took a job teaching history. But every winter, when the snow began to fall, he would look out at the white fields beyond his window and think of that night, of the frozen forest and the German soldier named Franz Weber. Most nights, he could still see him in his dreams, walking away into the dark woods, his silhouette swallowed by snow. He had saved 24 men, yet his name would never appear in any history book. Walker couldn't accept that. He needed to know what happened to him. In 1948, with the world trying to rebuild, Walker returned to Europe. He traveled through Belgium and Germany, carrying a small notebook filled with sketches of the forest and notes on what he remembered. His goal was simple: find Franz Weber, or at least find someone who knew him. But post-war Germany was a graveyard of lost names. Millions of soldiers were missing, entire divisions erased. Still, Walker searched. He visited the ruins of Munich, where records showed several men named Weber had once lived. Most were dead, some had vanished in the east. But in a half-burned church archive, he found a lead. Corporal Franz Weber, 18th Volksgrenadier Division, reported missing, December 1944, Ardennes sector. It wasn't proof, but it was something. Walker spoke with villagers near Lanzereth, old farmers who remembered the winter of '44. One man recalled a German soldier who returned to their village, wounded and frostbitten, sometime after Christmas. He didn't stay long, the man said. He left food for the children, said he was going south. Another villager claimed the soldier helped protect locals from retreating SS units who were looting homes. He said the war was lost, the woman remembered. He just wanted it to end. Walker pieced the clues together. It seemed Weber had survived, at least for a while. But then the trail went cold. Years passed. Walker returned home, started a family, and built a quiet life. Yet every Christmas, he told his children the story, not of victory or battles, but of a man who chose mercy over orders. The war made monsters, he would say, but sometimes, even in hell, you find a human soul. In 1963, almost 20 years after that night in the forest, Walker received a letter postmarked Munich, West Germany. It was from a man named Karl Hoffmann, a retired railway worker. The letter was short, written in broken English, but one line made Walker's hands tremble. Greater than, I knew Franz Weber. He saved me and others after the war. Walker immediately wrote back. Weeks later, he received a longer reply. Hoffmann explained that in early 1945, as Germany collapsed, he had met Weber near Augsburg. Weber had been hiding in an abandoned farmhouse, refusing to fight anymore. He had told Hoffmann about the Americans in the snow, about how he had guided them to safety and chosen not to kill when he easily could have. He said it was the only thing in the war he didn't regret, Hoffmann wrote. He said he saw his brother in those soldiers. He was tired of killing. According to Hoffmann, Weber had eventually surrendered to American forces under a false name, Franz Meyer, to avoid execution for desertion. He was sent to a POW camp in France, released in 1947, and returned briefly to Munich. But soon after, he disappeared again, likely joining the waves of displaced workers moving across Europe. Walker was stunned. It wasn't proof of survival, but it was hope. He traveled to Germany again that summer to meet Hoffmann. The old man led him to a small graveyard outside Augsburg. Beneath a simple wooden cross, weathered and unmarked, lay a plaque that read only, greater than, Ein Soldat ohne Hass, a soldier without hate. No date, no name. Just those words. Walker stood in silence for a long time. The forest, the snow, the sound of Weber's voice, all came rushing back. He placed his hand on the wooden cross and whispered, "You didn't disappear, Franz. You lived in all of us you saved." Before leaving, Walker left behind something of his own, his platoon's patch, carefully wrapped in cloth. It was all he could offer, a silent promise that Franz Weber would not be forgotten. When Walker returned to the United States, he wrote down the full story, every detail, every word, and sent copies to the families of the men who had been with him that night. They too remembered the German who had risked everything. Together, they decided to honor him each year, not as an enemy, but as a man who proved that even in the darkest war, humanity could survive. In 1971, the story finally reached a newspaper. The headline read, "The German Who Saved an American Platoon." It spread quietly, retold by veterans, teachers, and historians. No medals were ever awarded, no official recognition given. But that didn't matter. For those who lived, the memory was enough. One snowy December night, many years later, Walker's grandson asked him, "Grandpa, were you ever scared of the Germans?" Walker smiled faintly. "I was," he said, "until I met one who reminded me what courage really looked like." He paused, looking out the window where snow was falling softly, just like it had in the Ardennes. "You see, bravery isn't just charging forward. Sometimes it's walking away from hate." The boy nodded, though too young to understand fully. But Walker knew one day he would. That night, as always, he lit a single candle and placed it by the window. Its glow flickered against the frost, just as it had for nearly 30 years, a silent tribute to a German soldier who had once walked into the light instead of pulling the trigger. And somewhere in the memory of that endless winter, in the frozen heart of Europe, the spirit of Franz Weber, the soldier without hate, still stood guard over 24 men who lived because he refused to be what war wanted him to be.